everybody. Welcome to the Special Charter Review Committee meeting. It is October 28th, 2024. It's 5 p.m. We are meeting in the hearing room at One Government Center, Fall River, Massachusetts, pursuant to the open meeting law. Any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any media. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You got that, Margie? And if we could take attendance, starting at my right.
Dan Lobla. Paul Machado.
Rena Brown.
Kathy Nemkovich.
Tracy Almeida.
Tim Campos.
Beautiful. And we will open up this meeting for public comment.
Rita, I didn't have no meeting scheduled for you guys tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why it's all locked up. And
We-
You know when you guys have a meeting, I got it open.
Don't worry, we're all here. We got in.
All right, is it open to the public? You
It
want the
is.
doors open?
Yes. Thank you. The janitor just came in and let us know that he was not notified of tonight's meeting. So if the public does come in after he unlocks the doors, we're going to reopen it for
Absolutely.
public input, okay?
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. And seeing no public at this time, we will move on to the discussion and review 5 and 6 of the charter report as well as the charter. I will start by saying I went to the city council meeting with Tracy, and Corporation Council was also there. And I listed 3 of the things that the city councilors kind of were asking about and wanted us to bring back to the committee. If anybody does not have a copy of the charter, I have an extra copy here. You want one, Dan?
Yeah, okay.
What is it dated? Because I think I had, is this the latest?
Thank you.
The very last one,
No, that has-
does yours have yellow in it?
Yes.
Okay, that yellow one, there's a redo, but not with yellow. Let me
Okay.
see, I might have an.
But is it okay, the yellow stays as is, right? It's just highlighted in yellow?
It was just highlighted.
Okay, that's
Hang
fine.
on a second.
That's
Here's-
fine.
I got a couple reports.
That's fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. all
Save a
right.
tree.
And with that,
Yes. No.
one of the questions regarding vacancy of the mayor, that is, hang on, section 2-11, which reads, 9, 10, 11. Alrighty, mayor, no, wait a minute,
It's
maybe it's
3-10.
3.
3-10.
3 dash, thank you. 3-10. Well, I'm gonna start out, vacancy in the office of mayor. 3A is titled temporary absence of the mayor. And there was some discussion by one of the counselors about the powers of the acting mayor. Apparently, when Councilor Pont was acting mayor, he was not permitted to run the school committee meetings. And I didn't tell him that we did not change the powers of an acting mayor. We left it as the old charter was. It didn't prohibit him from presiding over the school committee meetings, and I did indicate to him if they didn't let you, then it sounds like that was a charter
Yeah, I heard
violation.
that, right, yes, yes.
Yeah. So, but moving on, vacancy in the office of the mayor, 310, I'll just read it in the record. Whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of the mayor by death, removal, resignation, or incapacity for a period greater than 21 days during the first 18 months of the term for which the mayor was elected, the city council shall call a special election to be held within 90 days following the date the vacancy is created to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the unexpired term. Between the date of the declaration of the vacancy and the certification of the results of the special election, the vacancy in the office of the mayor will be filled as provided in 3(8)(a). If the council president is unable to serve, the provisions of 3(8)(c) shall apply. The candidate elected as the mayor in such special election shall be sworn to office immediately upon certification of the results of the special election. The council was concerned that in the event a mayor has a long-term medical disability, open heart surgery or something like that, they were somewhat uncomfortable and not happy about how we wrote this.
They had a problem with the 21 days.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, thank you. And first of all, very good job done by you and Tracy.
Oh, thank you.
I did watch the meeting, and I particularly took note, but I think, I'll stand corrected, you guys were there, I wasn't, but I think that's talking about the temporary vacancy and the number of days. Am I wrong?
No.
It was the number of days.
It's the
but-
number of days, but it applies, I think, to both the
But-
temporary
but
absence.
Does it apply to the, I think it applies more to the other section, doesn't it?
The vacancy in the office of the mayor.
Well,
mean,
3(8) is how we addressed vacancies. And we said council president, I think we took out that language,
I see.
unwilling, we took the language out of unwilling,
We did.
but we didn't make any big changes to that.
Did we make
Um,
any changes to 3-10, the vacant, did we make any changes to that vacancy in the office of the mayor?
Because as the section that you just read, Madam Chair,
Right.
I think that's, I'll call it the existing charter that was passed in 2017.
That's okay.
That's the language that's in the existing charter, and as far as I'm aware, even the original charter commission didn't change that. That was the language
Right.
that was in the prior charter, prior to 2017. I think Councilor Pond and Councilor Dion, and I'm happy to stand corrected, were more concerned about the temporary vacancy, because one of them said, what about a disability, what about a heart attack, what about an open heart surgery?
Right.
They were talking about they were talking about 310 when they were talking about that.
Yeah.
Because they were
It was
concerned that they were
3:10.
gonna, because he specifically said a mayor's gonna lose their job if they can't serve for 21 days, and that was related to 310.
Yeah, so my take was that it applies to the other section more than this. And I'm pretty sure I voted against the 21 days. I'll stand corrected on that. In any event, I never liked any number of days for a temporary vacancy for the reasons that the council has stated. I think the only way, it's just my opinion, people can vote any way they want. I've lost 1,000 votes, I don't get offended. But I think the only way that a mayor leaves office is by the ballot box or by a recall. That's my opinion.
Well, I have the old charter. I call it, when I refer to it as old, I don't mean the one,
The one that we
the
were
current charter, the
Yes.
current charter. 3(8), temporary absence of the mayor. A,
I yield for now.
acting mayor.
We added the 21 days.
We added the 20, in 3(8), temporary absence of the mayor, the current charter, whenever by reason of sickness or other cause, the mayor is unable to perform the duties of the office, the president of the city council shall be acting mayor unless he's unable or unwilling. We took out unwilling. And then it says 3(8)(c). 3(8)(c), in the event the city council president is unable to serve, then the vice chair. That's what this current charter says. Our 3(8), we put in the 21 days.
Because the original charter did not have a date by
a
which
time.
action needed to be taken. It was
Right.
to open-ended, and I'm fine discussing the 21 days again, but I think that was, everybody agreed that that was problematic, in that there was no time frame that
Right, like,
solicited action.
right, when it, exactly. So 3.8 in the current doesn't have 21 days. 3.8 in our recommendation, we put 21 days in 3.8. And then we put it again in the 3.10.
So in the current one, can
Current
you
one,
read 310 in the current one?
in 3.8, we don't have
right, but
21
310.
days. And 3.10, we don't
How does that
have.
read? How does that first
any-
sentence read?
In 310, the current one says, whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of the mayor by death, removal, resignation, or any other reason during the first 18 months, the council shall call a special election to be held within 90 days following the date the vacancy is created.
That's reference to 21 days in both of those sections.
And we
Now
put
there-
21
now
days in both.
Yeah,
And I-
3A.
And I feel the 3.8 timeline is reasonable, because it just says, this person's in charge if you can't serve for more than 3 weeks.
Yeah, that was kind of our problem, is that it was, when do you say it's vacant?
And, or do we look at a month or 30-day timeline? I don't know, that's fine too. But I think the point that folks were making at the city council meeting was the issue around the loss of the post, right? The loss of the position, because they would have to give it up. It was a
Right.
new election, blah, 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 so that they had 21
It was
days.
310 that issue with,
Right.
because 310 called for that special election.
And perhaps, I don't know if we included the 21 days originally in the 310, or if it just kind of got there by proxy, because we voted on it in 3.8. So perhaps those dates should be different. And their example was
Right.
a surgery with a recovery time.
Correct.
And I understand that, but even with the recovery time, it doesn't necessarily render the mayor unable to serve, right? It just maybe limits their involvement, but unable to serve is literally unable to serve, so it can't, the city must run, so there needs to be a successor.
Right, like, I like the 21 days in the temporary
Yes.
absence of the mayor.
Yes, I think so too, I don't see any
Medical-
problem with that.
Temporary or permanent,
City council,
There
president
should be
takes
a time
over,
frame.
and it's perfectly reasonable.
right, because it's all talking about temporary. And so, right, nobody's in that office for 21 days temporary, right? Maybe we take I don't know.
Just take it out, does it make sense to take it, that time period out of 310, but leave it in 3.8?
Well, listen, as it stands right now, if the mayor had to go to, if he had to go out of the state, out of the country, he or she had a family, whatever, the city council president steps in automatically. That's the way I would be most comfortable with it remaining. There's never been an issue, I don't even think that was discussed by the first body. I like if the mayor is unavailable for whatever reason, the city council president steps in until the mayor returns. They communicate, the city administrator is also there to assist, as the city administrator does on a daily basis. I personally don't believe, and frankly never liked any of the numbers, I don't believe we need any number. If the mayor is unavailable, there's a succession right now.
I have a problem with the word unavailable. It's subjective.
Okay.
Right, and so I think that's where we could take it up, is that issue around unavailability. Maybe the timeline for succession wouldn't be such an issue if that availability was defined more clearly.
Make it any word you want. The point is, if the mayor is,
What does unavailable mean is what I mean.
Can I-
Let's define that.
Tim, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to simplify and, So section 3A is the temporary absence of the mayor,
Mhm.
and 310 is the vacancy in office of mayor.
Mhm.
The temporary absence is obviously factoring in some illness or having to leave the country, like all of those scenarios. A permanent or a vacancy is the mayor is not there, right? The mayor is not, there's a hole, there's an opening for that job, likely by death, removal, resignation, or a long-standing illness that is rendering him incapable of being able, he or she incapable of being able to take that role. So perhaps we can look at it as separating the two as a permanent absence, temporary absence, and then the timeline for 310, we can extend it if we wanted to, because a 3-week absence of the mayor, if we don't like the 21 days for a temporary, then we can adjust that if we feel like that's too short.
Right.
But I think the obvious choice would be whatever that timeline is, let's say it's 3 weeks, then the president of the city council would step in until the mayor
Right.
returns. For a permanent vacancy, now we have to deal with the fact that there's currently no
Right.
mayor.
I mean, I'll tell you what, though,
Is
our
that like a month, 6
recommendation.
weeks?
Our recommendation in 3.8, we added this line. In the event that the mayor announces his inability before the expiration of 21 days, these provisions shall immediately apply upon that notice. That sentence is added. It's not in the current 3.8. So I would love to assume if a mayor suffers such a debilitating activity, right, that they would notice the city. Listen, this is gonna take a lot longer. I'm gonna be unable. And we know 310 would apply, right? I agree. I think so you're gonna be sick for 6 months?
Well, that's like
Okay,
a
that's still a
full-on
temporary, if-
incapacity. Yeah,
right.
that's the two are dealing with very
Right, the
different
two are
scenarios.
different.
And I think maybe if we wanted to add a timeline in 310 to say, if you are incapable for X amount of time, then you're deemed
What's
absent.
reasonable?
You know, there's a vacancy now, you're no longer available
Right.
to serve your role. You know, that could be 6 weeks versus 3 weeks. It could be, you know, whatever that is. I don't know if we want to discuss it. But the 21 days, I think it was consistent between the two.
Because we had it in 3.8,
Because we had it
right.
in 3.8, but it
But
doesn't
you're
have
right,
to.
I think my sentiment was that it was that 3-week timeline.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, I went, yeah, that is kinda quick, right?
For a full removal.
Yeah, for a full vacancy.
For a full
What-
vacancy.
When I was thinking about this, I was trying to think about it in practice. So the mayor announces that they are unable to serve. That automatically, the city council president steps into that role. So that deals with the temporary absence. Now, that city councilor that can stand in that role for whatever amount of time, and only when, I think that the problem with this, and I'm trying to even think about it holding up in court, is the definition of
Of-
the timeline.
Mm.
Because then, or the definition of a vacancy made more clearly. Like, what must a mayor be able to do in order to serve? How do you deem somebody unable
See,
to serve?
that's when it gets too dicey, I think, that's why I think we
The
should just
timeline is
leave it
dicey,
as
though.
the existing charter is.
Well, that was one of the problems in the 10 taxpayer lawsuit, is part of the argument for a minute was that because that mayor was out on bail and you can't freely travel in and out of Mass was problematic. I thought it was problematic. So a mayor has a condition of bail that says you can't leave Massachusetts without permission, and mayors travel all over the place. So I always thought that the qualifications for mayor need to say things like, you know,
You must be able to do X, Y, and Z.
X, Y, and Z.
That's maybe where we're safer, because we're not putting a timeline on it, we're putting actions, because the timeline is irrelevant without the action, right?
Right.
It's the action that is important. We want to make sure that the business of the city can move forward,
Right.
and it's not stagnated by this person's absence.
Well,
Well,
but-
but the temporary absence
Yes.
is included there so that there's coverage.
Right.
What's
So
a
for
reasonable
20
timeline for that person to serve in that role? right?
So the
Without an
21
election.
days applies, the city council president comes in. During that temporary absence, the mayor may recover, may return.
But what's
Yeah,
I guess,
But in terms of the vacancy in the office of the mayor,
what's a reasonable timeline?
Well, no, but I don't, see the way I read it, now that I'm reading this, I think it goes back to what Tim was saying. 3-8 is temporary. I'm sick, I'm whatever, I'm coming back. 3-10, I'm not coming back. So why put a timeline on it? Like that's saying death, removal, or resignation. Leave it at, I'm not coming back.
well, I think the timeline, but I don't think that's the appropriate timeline. But I think the timeline is
For an
to
election.
make sure that there's something, what if someone who is lying in bed in a coma and never says, hey, I can't come back to work, you know,
What do you do?
what do you do?
That-
So
The council president is there?
And for how long should a council president serve as the acting mayor in that role is what I'm
'Cause-
thinking
Yeah,
about.
because the other thing is, there are limits on the acting mayor, and there are limits on it. They can do everything, they can't do permanent appointments. I mean,
Unless, they can, unless the disability or absence of the mayor shall extend beyond 60 days. That's in B.
right,
So they can make all the same, they have full access to the office after 60 days, even in the event of a temporary absence, is that true?
right. So powers of the acting mayor have these powers of the mayor, are indispensable and essential to conduct the business in an orderly, efficient manner, and on which action may not be delayed. The acting mayor shall have no authority to make a permanent appointment or removal from city service unless the disability or absence of the mayor shall extend beyond 60 days, nor shall the acting mayor approve or disapprove of any measure adopted by the council unless the time within which the mayor must act would expire before the return of the mayor. The city council president or any other city council who may be serving as acting mayor pursuant to 3-8C shall not act as a member of the city council. So, in the powers of the acting mayor, we've solved some of those problems, right?
Yeah, I think 3-8 is fine as is, in my opinion.
With the 21
I
days.
agree.
I do
think
too.
it's fine, I wouldn't touch it.
It's
I-
the 310.
I think 3-10, we have to look at that as permanent, and so maybe what exists today currently is fine, to Dan's point, because you're saying we added in the incapacity for a period greater than 21 days.
Well, this
But
has a
maybe we
special
extend
election
the
within
21
90
days.
The current charter says,
Right now, technically, if the mayor goes on a 2-week vacation and he's out of the city, technically the city council president steps in
Well, that's 3-8.
till he returns. If he's out sick for a day, technically the city council president takes over. I don't see why we need a time frame. The city is ran, in my opinion, with the provisions of the line of succession as it's been since, 1854? I mean,
I think the reasons in 3-10, we have to
I
revisit that.
just,
so does it become automatic?
I think
when-
3-10 means that the mayor, he or she died, they were removed, or they resigned. Like, they're
No
not
mayor.
coming back.
There's no mayor.
look,
But
Yeah, there's
310
no mayor.
has, whenever the current charter, whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of mayor by death, removal, resignation, or any other reason during the first 18 months of the term for which the mayor was elected, the city council shall call a special election. My problem with that is for any other reason.
Yeah, I agree, so maybe we don't put that in. What would be the, because it's covered under, so let's say, okay.
When you can't travel out of the state of Massachusetts because the judge said you can. That was my problem with that fiasco, is that I felt the duties of the mayor couldn't be fulfilled by somebody who had a travel order on them, right? Of course, he got around that, you could get
But
permission,
but
but.
there again, no, isn't that though covered, Renee, under 3-8, under the, because by not being able to travel out of the state or whatever, the mayor is unable to perform the duties of the office. So isn't that covered under there?
Yeah.
That's, he's unable to perform the duties of the office.
That wasn't enough for them to rule against him in the last election.
Yeah, I mean-
Go-round, though. He was able to continue to serve as mayor, despite the fact that he was unable to travel outside
And
the
the,
state.
the reason he was is because he wasn't convicted of anything, he was only charged.
Mhm. But he was still unable. The restrictions of his.
So I think.
But I mean, like Paul, what if, God forbid, there's a coma, right? And they can't give permission. We let the council president serve until the next general election?
Well, that's
That's my problem
that's
with
my
this.
point,
If
is
the
how
mayor
That's
goes
my
to
problem.
Martha's Vineyard right now for 2 days, as soon as he leaves,
No, that's not what I'm talking about, Dan. What I'm saying is in the vacancy, that provision, any other reason, if he, God forbid, suffers a medical emergency, that he cannot resign because he is unable to verbalize,
and the council
the
president
stays
in.
there for 2 years. What if it's right after, because it's talking about within the first 18 months. I mean, remember again, they're only 2-year terms, which we also have to talk about tonight.
Oh,
They're
well, no,
only
but-
2-year terms, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean,
Other
you're right,
charters
maybe,
don't,
maybe take
Yeah,
it
but,
out.
yeah, but
they
it's,
don't put any restrictions on time.
No time.
No, and I've looked at a lot of
Okay.
different ones, and none of them have anything, we're putting in a
Then,
timeline.
then maybe
but we
there's just
cover
ways
it, we
to take
cover
out.
your concern though, I think, Renee,
In 3A?
3-8D, because we say if it happens within the first 18 months of the term, then a special election is held. If the vacancy happens in the last 6 months, the acting mayor will complete the term.
Yeah,
So
I think you're
technically,
right. I
the-
think we just take out the 21 days then in
Well, you
310.
could, so what was the section you read, it was the 60 days to be able to put,
To make appointments.
permanent
It's in,
appointments.
yeah,
That's
3-8B.
right, cause I mean, that's a
In-
huge,
in 3-8B, powers of the acting mayor.
right, so,
That's the current charter.
Permanent-
In our in our 3-8B, we didn't change any of it.
I mean, if we were gonna put a time on a permanent vacancy, then you might wanna synchronize it with the ability to do permanent appointments. Cause that's a huge component of being a mayor, so
Yeah, but it doesn't, but,
we don't need to
but
put a timeline.
does a coma, so let's say we go to the
No, you're
coma
right.
example,
You're right.
like a coma, do we say, well, okay, he could be in a coma, he or she could be in a coma for 60 days before we do
I
anything?
think, you know
I
something,
think if
no,
someone's
come
in a
to think
coma
of it,
for
though,
60 days and they come back out, they're not gonna be the mayor, you know?
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
maybe I'm just wondering though, because in 310, we don't cover,
Timeline.
like, what if, so we say, the permanent vacancy happens by death, removal, or resignation. Because we're
And
taking out that or
we're
something
taking out,
else.
we're taking out or
But what's
incapacity.
another category for that, or
Maybe we
something
just
else?
take out, so then maybe it's whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of mayor by death, removal, resignation, or incapacity, we take out for a period greater than 21 days. If we take that out, it would read, whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of the mayor by death, removal, resignation, or incapacity during the first 18 months for which the mayor was elected, city council calls a special election. We just take out the 421 days.
So we're talking about, I think the key is here, temporary absence versus total vacancy.
We're gonna
Right.
take it out in both places, I
And
think.
Well, I think
No, I
we
would
leave
keep
it
it
in the
in 3A.
temporary.
Temporary
Leaving it
status.
temporary?
We
Yeah.
leave it in temporary, because we have to have something to.
But I
to-
think then the question goes to, I think it was
No, no, you're
Counselor
right,
Deal.
though, it just goes right to C. I mean,
I mean, the
you
pre-
just said it, if
Yeah,
the, it, 3-8, A, B, and C will cover it,
yeah.
The practice is normally the city council president steps in
yeah.
when the mayor is unable to serve for a certain time. That usually happens automatically.
So should we,
To
I think we
Dan's
should
point. That's what I'm
It
saying.
needs
take
Come
out the
out
of
both
21
places.
consecutive days.
But if that didn't happen, or if there was some there was some confusion or argument about that temporary absence, at least the I don't know, the does
Yeah, I
21
think you
days
do,
not
I think
guide?
when I go back to our conversations, I mean, it really comes down to like, what if the mayor just takes off?
The city council president,
Like,
by the
who
way,
even
does not
doesn't
serve
tell
as the
anybody?
mayor if he leaves and goes to the vineyard tomorrow. That's not how the charter works, Dan.
I-
The charter only works if the charter says it. So when you say things like, if he goes to the vineyard, the council president sits in of him, no, that's not how it works.
Ask
Because
the
he's still
council
able to perform his
It's not how
duties.
it works according to the charter,
Right.
but that's how it works realistically.
No.
I know, but it has to be
does not.
documented
Yeah, it
somewhere.
I mean,
right? And if
I,
that's the way it works, it should be documented that way.
That's what I'm saying.
In the event that there is an absence of the mayor for any length of time, the
Yeah,
city
the city
council
council
president
president
steps in.
take over.
No timeline, just automatically, and we can,
that's
that's the way, honestly, it is at the university. If the dean
Yep.
steps away, one of the associate deans must be named as the dean for that college for the day, if you're
Right.
traveling out of state. And
Right.
it's automatic, there doesn't have to be a declaration, it's known, it's written somewhere in the contract.
Well, it's gotta be written somewhere in the charter.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So we need some language around that, because while this might be practice that is common, it's not written.
It's not in the charter.
not- and it's
and it's a
not
charter
in the charter.
violation.
Well,
No.
that's a problem.
but
There
again,
is
We can
no way
change
Joe
that.
Camaro walks in the mayor's office and does his job when the mayor goes to the vineyard. That's just not happening.
Well, yeah,
Because if it is, it's a charter violation.
but isn't the,
There's
let's say the
thousands of
mayor,
charter violations.
if the mayor does go to the vineyard, does that necessarily mean he's unable to perform the duties of the office?
No.
I
And
mean, he's
that's-
a phone
No.
call, like, you know,
That's
boom.
why we included the 21 days.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we wanted to kind of solidify
yeah.
when that transfer occurs.
And if somebody wants that power and
See,
wants
I-
to take it, they can. they
I
can
I like the
use charter
timeline
to
and the
their-
temporary.
I think
but
3/8 is
I can
fine.
see taking the timeline out of the 10.
I do, I
Yeah.
agree.
Because I think you need a triggering event. And our triggering event for the temporary absence is 21 days. Whether it's a
Open
death
heart
in
surgery,
Korea, open
yeah.
heart surgery, at least it's definitive. All right, Joe, you're gonna have to step up. You know, Mayor Coogan is gotta go to Japan for something. I mean, I don't know. But I like a definitive triggering event.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
even
I
then,
think
what's
temporary
the
absence,
temporary absence,
I
you know?
think 21 days is fine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Are we talking about like a business trip, like, you know, out of the country where, but he can still answer email and get on phone calls? I mean, we're in the digital age, so, I mean, you can do business from anywhere.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, a simple Zoom is as if you're sitting in your office. So, you know, what constitutes the real temporary absence now? Is it sickness? Is it, you know, got into a car accident? Is it taking a sabbatical because, you know, maybe it's a woman mayor and they're pregnant and they're going on, you know, if there's something along those lines, but I think we need to think of it more as
Well-
what constitutes a temporary absence.
Well-
Not just
well, or
going
other
to the
cause.
vineyard. Yeah.
Whenever by reason of sickness or other cause, you think we should define other cause?
See, I don't
I
think
think,
we
or
can.
it just has to be by reason of sickness or something along those lines, like health related. Or we need to define further what that cause could be, otherwise,
Well,
you know, if the mayor's gonna go to the vineyard, then.
but I think it comes to, I think the key there is the mayor is unable to perform the
Right.
duties of his office.
Right.
Like,
it
I think
takes some
that's
time
it.
away.
Do we
Okay.
define
Wait,
duties?
So there's a couple of.
Well, that's why I'm looking in here to
things,
see
so I
if the
like
duties
our other
of the
research.
mayor are.
There is a
Can I-
handbook.
Can I
Yeah.
just mention?
Paul, go
when,
ahead.
Yeah, so when, the former mayor's situation came up, and I don't wanna complicate this, because we've removed the ability of the city council to remove the mayor.
Yeah.
But at the time that they were considering that, I gave them a specific list of what the duties were that he was going to be unable to do because of the pending criminal case. Okay, so he wasn't gonna be able to meet with certain people, et cetera, so I gave them a specific list. We've removed that, and the issue is that we've removed that because the case said that it wasn't legal, but, the problem is that if we start defining this
It's gonna get-
more
yeah.
precisely, you know, who's gonna make that determination?
Right, Because we may miss something, like we may, you know, if you say it's,
Sure.
if you list specifics, then does that mean everything else is
Right,
okay?
right,
Now,
right, I
so
think
when
it
you use
invites
a term-
litigation.
When you use
Yeah.
a term like incapacity, but,
Come here.
Still slightly
but the
subjective.
question is, do we have, who determines this? Who determines this?
What, the 21 days?
It sounds like the city council shall call a special election to be held within 90 days. Are you talking about 310?
Yeah. Who determines that
Following the
it's a
date the
vacancy?
vacancy is created. So it sounds to me like
Is
the,
it-
the vacancy
Would have to be
is
by
an,
notice of something.
is an event,
Yeah,
like
have to
it
be
is.
by notice.
You know, so, remember the case law, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but the judge did talk about the city council not being able to terminate the mayor pursuant to,
Oh,
what was that,
yeah.
8.1? So,
Was that the provision where they tried to remove him by 7 votes?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
That
So-
was never legal.
We have to review that case law. I'm gonna suggest that, why don't we review the case law, and
And
ask
see the
that
language
this-
of the courts, kinda.
Because I don't remember specifically why they
Oh, I
said
don't
that
either, but I
was.
think I
Motion
got
to
it. I
table.
do have it, though.
So I would,
I didn't bring my whole notebook either, like, I have 2 accordion files this big, I don't know why.
Would a motion to table be in order?
Yeah,
So made.
second. So, is that okay? Is any more discussion? We're gonna pull the cases on that. There's been cases litigated where the council tried to remove a mayor, and they failed. But there's good language in there about the constitutionality of that, which may shed some light on our vacancy versus 3-8 and 3-10, so.
If anyone else wants to speak, then I need to remove the motion, cause
No, there's a
the
motion-
motion to table
There's
is
a
not
motion on the,
debatable.
there's a motion to table this discussion about 3-8 and 3-10, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the motion passes, we'll do a little more research, and feel free, everybody, to research. The other,
I'll send, in fact, I probably
Right.
have the decisions here, so I'll send out.
the other, topic that came up for a lot of discussion was,
Term limits.
term limits and, what's the language I'm looking for? So they're in for 2 years, in term,
The term of
like
office.
term of office limits and term limits, right?
Number of terms.
Like, can you be a mayor for 22 years? So here's how some of the discussion went. There was discussion for us to discuss term limits, whether, I'm certainly not thinking that we wanna decrease it to 1 year, but, the mayor, and there was also discussion about staggering council, positions, so
That suggestion
It's-
I really liked.
I
thought that
did
makes-
it too.
I thought it made a lot of sense, so you're not electing a full complement of new people every 2
Right.
years. You're,
Where
you've
are
got
our
some,
term limits?
you know,
I would have a question from
knowledge,
Mr. Lyons about
prior
that.
knowledge
Would-
kind of
would
stuff.
that-
2-1 is,
That would mean,
for
more,
the
not that I'm
council.
opposed to more elections, but that would mean more elections, correct?
Well, here's the deal, and I thought about this. If we staggered, I think it would call for also an increase. I think it would have to be
An increase in term.
an increase in term.
I think in order to stagger it properly, I think we figured out that it's gonna be a 3-year term.
3-year term,
So every
And
2,
so-
it's rotating.
correct, right. And there was a lot of discussion from the council about both those. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Before we get there, and I sent out, we had talked about chapter 43, in very early meetings. And prior to talking about chapter 43, there had been discussion about ward councilors, there had been discussion about mayoral term. And when we looked at chapter 43, that is the Mass General Laws chapter that defines the plans of government. And it defines Plan A, which Fall River adopted, as a mayor and city councilors elected at large. And that also indicates that the term for the mayor is 2 years. Okay, then, chapter 43,
This is
Section
Mass
17.
General Law, Chapter 43,
Yeah.
Section what?
43,
Chapter 43, Section,
section for what?
No.
Plan A is,
tell me the law you're citing again.
chapter 43 sets forth 6 types of governments.
Which,
A through F.
I know, Mass General Law
We
what?
adopted Plan A.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, chapter 43, section 17C
Mm-hmm.
indicates that a question can be placed on the ballot for a 4-year term of mayor. And it specifies that the procedure is pursuant to the citizens' initiative ballot pursuant to the chapter. So we discussed this very early on, and we determined that the statute controls and that this committee has no authority to even consider changing the mayoral term to 4 years. Okay, so I think we should respond to the city council, remind them of chapter
43.
Say it again.
43.
Does that
So
apply
it's
to the city
Mass
council
General
too?
Law, Chapter 43,
Wait,
Section
no.
17C.
C.
Okay.
Would that apply to city council terms as well, or just mayoral?
I believe it applies to both.
I think you just said it was both mayor and city council, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
I don't know if I missed that.
I would have to research chapter 43.
Motion to
And
table.
Oh, wait a second, let me pull it up right now,
And I've
because
got,
if
I've
it's
got the
controlled.
decision, I've got the decision, from the judge.
I feel
On-
like those two issues are very different. The extending the term of the mayor from 2 to 4 and staggering city council for a 3-year are completely different.
Completely
issues.
different.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a provision in chapter 43. I did not, I researched the mayoral term, but I did not research whether there's a limit on the city council terms pursuant to the statute.
Hang on, I just pulled
I
it
think
up.
there is
Let
a-
me
I
just take a
think there
peek.
is.
So, Chapter 43, the title of Mass General Law, Chapter 43 is City Charters.
Yeah.
Definitions, authorization to adopt a plan of government, effect, hang on, what'd you say, 17?
Yeah. I have
So-
17C.
17, oath of office, A, salaries, city manager, council, compensation. 43, 17C, 4-year term for mayors in certain cities, 2-year term for certain cities, city council, powers, city clerk. 4318 addresses the city council, just taking a peek.
By the way, we had a 4-year term here in the past. It was a ballot question initiated by the late John Maderas. Okay, it passed. It stayed for 1 or 2 cycles, and then they decided to revert back to the 2-year term where we are now.
So that was a question that came up by the city council,
Mhm.
and the response would be, hey, this is
Mass General Law.
Mass General Laws, which
Well,
defines it,
I-
and
Like a city
provides,
officer.
and
And that's
provides
why
a
here,
provision
Okay,
for changing it.
so that really
But
doesn't
you know
cover it.
something?
No.
All it is addressing in 43 is the office of mayor. It's not addressing
No,
city council,
It doesn't address terms, for city council, just the mayor.
just the mayor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So city council might be one we can address.
Which makes more sense, because that suggestion that you're not voting on the full slate of city councilors every 2 years makes sense, because then you're having some institutional knowledge, essentially.
How do you, this may be a silly question, but how do you
start it?
initiate
Yeah,
that?
how do you, that's what I thought, like, who gets the,
Well, what,
So you
maybe
vote
you
for-
make some city council positions 2 and make some 3. Can't you go half and half?
Well, what, and then you leave it up to who to decide what they wanna run for, the 2-year or the 3-year?
What's wrong with having them run all at once?
no.
I wouldn't know how to start it.
I don't think, and like I said, I think there was a motion to table this too.
Absolutely.
And we'll have to address chapter 43, but I think when the plan of government is described, Plan A includes, I think there might be some time limits on the city council terms,
Mm.
so.
Motion to table.
I'll second that.
Motion to table term limits and term made by Dan, seconded by Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
What,
By show of hand, table the term limit discussion.
and what,
There's a motion made by Dan to
do
table
what
it.
for-
to do, right.
To look
for
into
action.
the Mass General Law
To
further,
give
right?
all a chance to research
To look further into
everything.
Plan A.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As-
Well, we know that the process for the mayor and changing the term for the mayor is specified by statute.
This is for city council.
We need to
Okay, understood.
research further for the city
So-
council.
Well,
Okay,
they,
so we're
they were,
tabling
they
it
had questions
for-
like about both, and so I did tell them, we had discussions about Ward, it didn't make it to motion. We had discussions about term limits, that,
None of this made it to motion.
I did tell them that, it did not make it to motion, but what I want to do is that we will do some research, the 2 motions to table it just passed. Cause I want to be able to go back and say, it made it to motion, it passed or it failed. Because they wanted us to discuss it further, and we will research it further.
Motion to adjourn?
Hang on, is there anything, no, cause I have to discuss the, not yet, Dan, I have to discuss further dates.
Okay.
Cause I wanna make sure we have quorums for
Yep.
these next few meetings. And I'm having a hard time getting the hearing room, we can't use the atrium next Tuesday. What is, Mondays are good for everybody, right? Mondays are still good for everybody,
For
correct?
most of us, yeah.
Okay. And is there any time in November, the Monday in November that, looking at the calendars,
I mean, you have Veterans
Yeah.
Day, that's a Monday,
um,
that's no good.
so it doesn't look
Next
like,
close.
October is over. And so November 25 is the Monday before Thanksgiving. Is Monday the 25th okay with anybody? This is just for me to ask, this is
Yeah.
not for me
I
to
think
schedule it
so,
right now.
yes.
It's just for me to ask about room.
Yep.
I would rather do the second, that's gonna be kind of a busy week
The,
for people.
What, December
December
2nd?
December, well, we're gonna need a couple meetings,
Yeah.
I have a feeling, so I'm gonna ask for December 2nd, that's an Ixnay on the 25th?
No.
Well, why don't you ask? and
I
let's
gotta
see.
ask, yeah. And then I'm gonna ask for December 9th, I'm just gonna ask availability, and it'll either be here or the atrium, just so we can get, finish our fantastic work. I'm gonna ask for all the Mondays in December, except for the 30th and, the 23rd. So I'm just gonna ask for November 25th, December 2nd, 9, and 16. And if I go into January,
We're gonna shoot.
because I always send like 8 dates and they come back with just a yes for 2. So if there's definite dates that people know they're not here. In January, we have the 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th.
The 20th is a holiday.
Okay, so no 20th.
Do we really think we're gonna need to go into 2025 with this?
Well,
Oh, God, please, no.
I hope not.
What are the remaining,
What's
are
the
these the
term?
remaining
What's-
issues?
what's our
Yes,
term?
these are the remaining issues.
Well, let's try to close this up into two meetings. This
Yeah.
next meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
and
It's
then-
just for me to ask about availability. That's the
Yeah.
only reason why
Yeah.
I'm going into 2025.
Yeah, because we really need to, I mean, there isn't,
Because this room is very popular, And so I would imagine I might not get any of those dates. But if the atrium is available, then I'll ask for the atrium, all right? And I will try to do it before 2025,
Yeah,
all righty?
if you could
We
close this out.
already have the answers on the
Yes,
mayoral
yes.
term.
Yes.
That's clear.
Yep.
So it's just a question of looking at the city.
I feel like we can probably knock
So it's
these
really
issues
just the
out
vacancy of the mayor
It's
and
the
then
vacancy-
the city council.
research.
And I'm also going to check the judge's decision on the, remember when they wouldn't allow the city council to?
Yeah, actually, I'm headed back to the office, I'll pull the case, I got it in, I have it in my file. All right, Dan,
Okay.
motion to
Read it.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
second, all in favor, there's a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
What time is it?
It is
5:55.
5:55.